Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Man of Steel, starring Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Michael Shannon, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, Lawrence Fishburne, and Russell Crowe, directed by Zack Snyder. Now before I get into this movie, I remember how excited I was for this movie coming out because it was one of those things that I was anticipating for after Star Trek or Iron Man 3. I think it was time for Supes to go back to the big screen after the Dark Knight trilogy's being successful and Christopher Nolan producing, not directing this time, is a good thing. But what did I think of this movie then? Well, I remember it was a lot of fun. But what did I think of it now is the remaining question. Let's get into this. We open with baby Kal-El being born on who honestly thought the boy is naked, because there's bigger problems than that I'll discuss later in the show. And there are a lot of parallels between Superman 1 and 2 that are in this movie, and I'll talk about that throughout the review too. But come on, why do you guys have to complain about the baby being naked? For crying out loud, that's what babies are supposed to look like as soon as they're born. Jor-El, played by Russell Crowe, talks to the people in charge of Krypton and looks a hell of a lot like the beginning of Superman 1, but Russell Crowe was always a fighter in the movies. But I still like Marlon Brando much better as Jor-El, despite how little they both did in both movies. General Zod, played by Michael Shannon, I first thought, why is he shouting? Because at the beginning he kept on shouting quite a bit. But by the rest of the movie, he calmed down a bit when he comes back later in the film. But Terrence Stamp is a much better Zod, but I also like this Zod, don't get me wrong. When we get the middle to the end, but still, Terrence Stamp is a much better Zod in my opinion. Sending Kal to Earth in the Codex reminded me of the original Superman movie from 1978, and he crashes, but the difference is they dealt with Kal as a boy until he becomes an adult. But here it goes back and forth from him as an adult to him as a kid. And the editing here at this point needed to be like the original, from a kid to an adult. I find it much better than in the original than in this movie, in my opinion. Kal, or on Earth, Clark Kent, as an adult, played by Henry Cavill, who has the look and the physicality of playing Clark, aka Superman, and I like that about him in the role. But my problem is he's too destructive, and I'll get to that action scene later in this show when I get there. Another problem is he changes who he is, going hitchhiking from town to town, and if he becomes the menace of his powers, then he disappears. Again, and that reminded me of the Incredible Hulk TV series, which is very similar. And I feel Zack Snyder is not only ripping off Superman, but the Hulk as well. Amy Adams as Lois Lane. Now, I know this actress from Enchanted originally. Please forgive me for that. And every single time I see her, I think of her as the princess character from Enchanted, ironically. But her as Lois Lane, she does not have the toughness of Margot Kidder whatsoever. And I met Miss Kidder before. She's a very nice lady. I even have her autograph from the original Superman. See? It's right here. And it says my name right there. So there you go. Kevin Costner and Diane Lane as Jonathan Pa Kent and Martha Ma Kent, as I'm calling them throughout the show. I do like Diane Lane's Ma Kent, but Costner's Pa Kent I had problems with. Because, for one thing, there's a scene when Clark says, "What was I supposed to do? Just let them die?" And Pa Kent says, "Maybe." And I thought, oh, come on, that's not Pa Kent at all. Come on, that's not really Pa Kent in the comic books and in the original Superman at all, number one. And number two, he tells Clark not to use his powers until he's ready because people won't understand him. And when Pa Kent gets himself killed in a twister storm, which that scene I could care less about Kevin Costner in this movie. Even though I do like Costner as an actor, this movie doesn't serve him well whatsoever, in my opinion. The scene at the bar. when Clark gets beer poured on him and moves to another town and smashes up the guys who beated him up's truck did remind me of Clark getting beat up in the diner scene in Superman 2. Which, good for you when you stand up and teach a bully a lesson on your move, Snyder. 2 thumbs up for that. The director, Zack Snyder of 300, Watchmen, and Sucker Punch. He has a good vision, but the wrong idea for Superman for reasons I'll bring up later in the show. But like I said earlier, but can I say at the beginning of the movie when Russell Crowe beats up some men on Krypton and the camera shakes, I thought, hold the camera still, please. Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White has very little to do in this movie. Remind me, why is he in this movie? Because he does very little. I don't know whether I like him or not. That's the problem. It's like, you need to demonstrate him more. Clark or Cal, meaning Jor-El, and how he explains where he came from, and who General Zod is a well-acted scene. I will give the movie that. And when he first puts on the Superman suit and the S meaning hope, which is completely hopeless, like I said earlier, Henry Cavill has the physicality of being Superman and looks good in the suit. And I like the moment we see Clark flying and testing the limits of him as Superman. But in the original, we never get to see Clark testing his limits on being Superman. And we get it here, and I don't find it bad at all. It's not bad. I actually liked it. I really like the scene when Clark gets home to his mother and the dog comes right up to him. I thought that was cute. And Diane Lane, I really like this character, and I don't mind the actress either. Don't get me wrong. Because she's a good, quiet woman of the film, in my opinion, for Clark. Zod threatens the world to bring Cal or Clark to them, and Clark turns himself in and gets himself chained up was pretty stupid, but the stupidest thing ever and was 2 things in this scene, that same exact scene. One is they can't say Superman, and Lois almost says it, but that screechy sound comes in, and 2, he breaks the chains that they put him on. That was so stupid to put him in the chains in the first place, I felt. Zod explains how Krypton will exist on Earth and the humans being extinct. That was a poor villain plot, even from General Zod, who was super powerful from Superman 2 and has a female alien and a strong alien. And this thing does the same thing, but the female's name is, oh, here it comes, Feora Ul. And by Ul, I mean U-L, not E-L. But these aliens are not the greatest villains ever, unlike Zod, who's not too great in this movie, but I still like him as a character. Jor-El gets Lois out of Zod's ship, and I thought that was funny in an odd kind of way, because in the original, they've never met before. Not once. Zod threatening Martha, which leads up to a destructive fight, which caused a lot of problems. First of all, Superman saves people, not destroying buildings, including one of the movie's advertisements, IHOP. And I love IHOP. I love their pancakes. I'm not going to lie to you. And destroying one was such a mistake. And I don't think they should have put business in a movie like that, to be honest. They break the road in Smallville. How are the construction workers going to fix the road? Worth millions of dollars to repair, and they also destroy half the town. And how are they going to fix that? And I'll talk about the city when in just a second. But come on, Superman doesn't destroy things. Well, let's get into this part right now, shall we? Superman versus Zod fight kept on destroying streets and much bigger buildings and being destructive until it ends with Zod's razor eyes. And he razor eyes a few civilians at a train station, and Superman snaps Zod's neck and kills him. Is a complete problem because Superman does not kill people. Like, next week, I'll even have a bigger problem with that. And destroying the machine, killing off humans to become Krypton, got the city into ashes. Like, again, who the hell is going to pay for every single building? Such a problematic script. I'm going to put it out there now. Even the original and 2 Superman movies made sure nothing is destroyed. But this movie destroys everything. Ugh, it makes me angry when they do this. Why destroy the city, Superman? Clark finally getting the glasses on to become the journalist at the Daily Planet was the right way to end the movie, because that's how he fell in love with Lois Lane, and here it was too early for Clark to love Lois, but still, I like the ending of the movie. I didn't mind it. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 5.0 out of 10. I could love it or hate it in either direction. And directing this is not a perfect way. But by any means, I like the original and second Superman movies the best. Much better than this thing. And it still remains a problem when Superman destroys everything and kills people. By people, I mean General Zod. And I criticized that like I will next week, but it was just an okay movie, not a great movie by any means necessary. But by next week, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a 2-parter on this. There may be some 2 parts on this next week's show. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for Man of Steel, and I will be back next week with Batman v Superman: The Dawn of Justice. And until next time, up, and away!